Hello, good day again everyone. Welcome to CE3241C Quantity Surveying Computations. So for this pre-recorded lecture, what we would be talking about is that of masonry works. So about masonry works, let's have a little bit of a background first. Masonry, as per definition, is the building of a certain structure with individual units bounded together. And by the individual units in that term right there, we often call them as masonry units. And the most common masonry units are that of bricks, concrete hollow blocks, stones, and whatnot. But for our pre-recorded lecture, so for this pre-recorded lecture, we would be talking about concrete hollow blocks as our main masonry unit because concrete hollow blocks is the most commercially available masonry unit here in the Philippines. So that itself, concrete hollow blocks. So concrete hollow blocks, this is often referred to as CHB. So it is kind of self-explanatory why it is called CHB because that is concrete hollow blocks. So ayun lang yun. And CHB has two main types. So the first main type would be the load-bearing concrete hollow blocks. And the other being non-load bearing. So dito, non-load bearing. So ano ba yung pagkakaiba nila? So for non-load bearing, this would be having a compressive strength of 500 psi and below. So that is for non-load bearing. And as for load bearing masonry units, that would be above 500 psi. So if I am not mistaken, 500 psi is roughly 3.45 megapascals. So I'm not quite sure, pero sige, i-convert natin para lang sigurado tayo. So 500 psi is equal to 0.5 ksi. So 1 kip is equal to 1,000 pounds. So 0.5, we would be multiplying by our conversion factor of 6.895. So that would be 3.4475 megapascal. So that is to be our compressive strength of the non-load bearing concrete hollow blocks. So okay, enough of that. Concrete hollow blocks natin, the common thickness of that would be of 4 inches, 5 inches, and 6 inches. So thickness, lagay lang natin dito. Thickness would be 4 inches, 5 inches, and 6 inches. So that would be it. And in terms of estimates, 4 inches is roughly 100 millimeters. And as for 5, this is 125. Oops. That is to be 125 millimeters. And as for 6 inches, this is to be 150 millimeters. So this would be the most common thickness that we would be estimating in this subject right here. But some even some even have 8 inches hollow blocks. So in most cases, these hollow blocks right here are already load-bearing units. So load-bearing hollow blocks na sila. But we wouldn't be talking about this. Hanggang dito lang tayo sa apat na to. So what does this imply? Ito, thickness lang to. It would be this dimension right here. So, dyan lang sila nag-iiba kapag sinabi mong if you would be buying 4 inches hollow blocks, 5 inches hollow blocks, and 6 inches hollow blocks. So, this would just be that dimension right there. As for the length and the height I should say, so this is to be 0.4 and 0.2. So whatever the case may be, whatever thickness that you would be buying, they would always be having this dimension. So 0.2 by 0.4 by kung ano man yung thickness mo. So if you are to use 4 inches, this is to be 0.1. But if you are to use 5 inches, magiging 0.125 yan. And whatsoever. Let's talk about masonry works in general in our field of estimation. So in masonry works, this would be the common terms. The common composition that we are to be talking about. So the first one would be, as we have already talked about, CHB. So, CHB, yung isa pa nating term na kailangan malaman is the mortar. So, that would be cement and sand. And sand for block laying. So, for block laying, explain ko mamaya kung ano yung block laying. So, as for number 3, that would be cement and sand for hollow core. So, ang block laying natin kasi, yung ilalagay natin dito sa area na to para magkadikit-dikit ang ating mga concrete hollow blocks. And as for the hollow core, of course, you would be filling this hollow core with cement and sand. So, ay yung mga butas nila. And even this right here. So, that would be 1, 2, and 3. And as for number 4, this would be cement and fine sand for plastering. So, plastering, yun yung papalitadahan mo na you would be applying cement and sand here. Then, number 5, cement, sand, and gravel. So, concrete works. For the wall footing. So, wall footing. So, sa concrete works, alam nyo na yan. And as for number 6, we should also have reinforcing steel bars in our walls. So, I would be explaining this to you later. Reinforcing steel bars. And as for the last, this would be tie wires. So, in our masonry works, should compute for all of this. Ito yung mga kailangan natin to build our walls through masonry works. Let's proceed with the CHB by itself. So, once again, this would be the thickness, and the thickness would be in terms of 4 inches, 5 inches, and 6 inches. So, this would be the common thickness that we would be using. Itong 0.4 na to and itong 0.2 na to, this would be constants. So, ayan na yan. So, if that would be the length and the width, so for pretend that we would be having a certain wall, so drawing tayo dito ng pader. So, kunwari yun yung pader. Let's say our wall would be 1 meter by 1 meter by 1 meter. So, 1 meter, 1 meter. So, two-dimensional lang pala siya. So, 1 meter by 1 meter. And self-explanatory, this would be having a area of 1 square meter. And eto, ano ba yung area netong 0.2 by 0.4 na to? Since we are to lay out our concrete hollow blocks this way, so walang kinalaman yung thickness natin. Teka, palitan natin yung color. So, we are to lay out our hollow blocks this way. Ganyan. So, this is not scaled, by the way. So, kahit ano pang thickness ng concrete hollow blocks mo, may it be 4, may it be 5, or may it be 6, it would always be having a dimension of 0.4 by 0.2. So now, for us to compute how many hollow blocks are there in 1 square meter of area, we must divide it by the area of the hollow block. So, yung 1 square meter divided by this area of 1 hollow block para malaman natin kung ilang hollow blocks yung kasya sa isang 1 square meter na pader. So, with that being said, so this would be 1 square meter divided by 0.2 meters by 0.4. So, that would be per piece. So, that would be the area per piece. So, meter square would cancel out. So, ang answer natin dito would be 1 divided by 0.2 divided by 0.4. So, that is 12.5. So, meaning, sa isang square meter ng wall area, 12.5 pieces of CHB will be needed. So, pieces per square meters. This is to be our factor for hollow blocks. So, next up, ano ba ito? So, next na tayo no, sa number 2. This is to be cement and sand for block laying. Then, sa number 3 din na din tayo. So, cement and sand for hollow core. And that cement and sand right there is called mortar. So, this is to be our mortar works. So mortar. And mortar is the combination of, so may tatlo yan. Combination yan ng cement, sand, and of course, water. So ano ba yan? Actually, eto siya. Kung ano nakikita nyo dito, na linalagay ni Manong Kuya dyan sa mga yan. Ayan yung mortar. And we are to differentiate the two use of mortars in our masonry works with the use of CHB. That would be the mortar fill, and that would be the block laying mortar. As for the mortar fill, that would be the mortar that you would be putting in the hollow core. So, yung mga yan, ito yung iyong mortar fill. And as for the block laying mortar, that would be this part of your masonry right here. Yung pangdikit mo sa individual units ng ating masonry units, which is concrete hollow blocks. So this would be the conversion factors. So if you are to use 4 inches hollow blocks, meaning in one piece of hollow block, you would be covering 0.003 cubic meters of mortar. And if 6 inches, you would be having 0.006 cubic meters of mortar per piece of concrete hollow blocks. And as for block laying, ganun din explanation dito. So for 4 inches, you would be covering 0.005 cubic meter per piece of CHB. And for 6 inches, you would be covering 0.0008 cubic meters per piece. So those would be our conversion factors that we would be using later. Okay, so for this would be the class of mortar. So unlike in our concrete works, yung class A natin would be 1:2:4, etc. We also have different classes for mortars. So that would be class A, which is 1:2. Ito, cement and sand lang to, no? Wala nang kasamang gravel. And so for class B, this is 1:3, 12 bags. Class C, 1:4, 9 bags. And class D, 1:5, 7.5 bags. And here in masonry units, if it is not specified, the default class here would be class B. So meaning, for every cubic meter of mortar, we would be using 12 bags. So sa before, sa concrete works, ang default class natin doon would be class A, and the cement, number of cement bags per cubic meter of concrete is 9 bags. Dito sa mortar, class B natin yung default, and ang cement bags na kailangan natin would be 12 bags. So let's have an example later. So ito pa yung isang kailangan. So after that you have laid out your hollow blocks, you must plaster them. And by plaster, ito yung pagpapalitada. And in estimating the plaster, same din lang na mortar yung gagamitin natin. And if it is not specified once again, we would be using class B mortar. Yun din yung gagamitin natin dito sa plastering na to. And for us to get the volume of plaster, ang thickness netong plaster na to is actually 19 millimeters. So it would depend on the construction work by itself, but the most common thickness of rough plaster would be 3/4 inch or 19 millimeters. So we would be assuming this is to be 19 millimeters. So after that, you have plastered the wall roughly. So rough plastered yung ginawa natin. We would now be applying fine plaster to it. So by fine plaster, magpapahid tayo ng pure cement into the wall to make it smooth. So self-explanatory, this would be rough and this would be fine or smooth. By the way, in rough plastering, we would be using fine sand in our mortar mix. So dito, itong mortar mix natin na to, itong 1 cubic meter na to, in this rough plastering, we would be using fine sand. In fine plastering, di na tayo gamit ng sand dyan, pure cement lang yan na ipapatong natin sa rough plaster. Okay, so let's just have an illustrative example for you to understand this lesson better. So in this problem, determine the masonry works for the given wall using 4 inches CHB. So we would be using 4 inches CHB. And the wall is plastered both sides. So what does that mean? It means that in this wall right here, it would be plastered back to back. So etong side na to, mapaplaster siya, and as well as the other side, which is in the other side. Okay, so in masonry works, the first step that we would be doing is to get the number of hollow blocks that we would be needing in that wall. So number one is CHB. So for us to get the number of concrete hollow blocks in that area right there, what we would be doing is to compute for the area and multiply it by the factor that we have derived earlier, which is 12.5 pieces. So sinabi natin kanina na in 1 square meter of area, we would be needing 12.5 pieces of concrete hollow blocks. So that is what we would be doing here. So the first step is to get the area. So area is equal to, self-explanatory, that would be 6 meters by 3.3 meters. So solving this, we would be arriving at an answer of 6 times 3.3 equals 99/5. So our area would be 19.8 square meters. So this would be the area of the wall. And once again, to get the number of concrete hollow blocks, we must multiply this by 12.5. So 19.8 square meters, multiply it by 12.5 pieces per square meter. So once again, this is the factor that we have derived earlier. So using this equation right here, our answer would be 19.8 times 12.5. So that is to be 247.5. But we cannot buy 1/2 hollow block, so we must round it up. So the number of CHB that we would be needing in this project right here would be 248 pieces, 4 inches CHB. So it would be as easy as that. And if you are not convinced with this factor right here, you can actually do this. So number of CHB, wait, lagyan natin ng ibang color. So this would be an alternative. So number of CHB is equal to the area, which is 19.8 square meter. Divide this by the area of one piece of concrete hollow block. So that would be 0.4 meters by, 0.2 by 0.4 meters. So this would be the dimensions of one concrete hollow block. So ito yun, no? 0.2 and 0.4. So that would be it. And sige, calculator ulit natin para maniwala naman kayo sa akin. So that would be 19.8 divided by 0.2 and 0.4. So that is to be 247.5. So parehas siya dito. And if we are to round it up, since we cannot buy just 1/2 of a hollow block, so that would be 248 pieces, 4 inches CHB. So as you can see, they have the same answer. And by the way, guys, though we are using 12.5 pieces per square meter as a factor, in my projects, I use 13 pieces because when you are to order hollow blocks, yung iba doon nagka-crack. So parang factor of safety ko na yung 0.5 piece per square meter. But in our lessons, in our quizzes, we would be using 12.5. Sa actual nyo na gawin yung 13 kapag engineers na kayo. Okay, so now that we have our number of concrete hollow blocks, what we would be solving now would be the mortar fill, and the block laying mortar. So yung mortars natin yung kailangan natin i-solve for now. And ulitin lang natin, no? The number of CHB that we would be using in this project would be 248 pieces. So 248 pieces CHB. So why did I list this? Because in estimating the volume for mortar fill and block laying mortar, we are actually basing it from the number of hollow blocks that we would be needing. So if we are to need 248 pieces of CHB, yun yung i-multiply natin dito. And it is said here that we are to use 4 inches CHB. So using that, I mean, basing it from that itself, we would be using this factor and this factor. So, okay, let's solve for the mortar fill first. So, mortar fill. So, okay, for mortar fill, 4 inches gagamitin natin. So, the volume of mortar fill, so let's say MF, is equal to the number of hollow blocks that we would be needing. So, that would be 248 pieces CHB times our factor, which is 0.003 cubic meter per piece. So the volume of mortar that we would be needing to fill this voids right here, so yung hollow core would be 248 times 0.003. So that is to be 0.744. Oops, 0.744 cubic meters. So that is to be for the mortar fill. And as for the block laying mortar, so para dito sa lines na to, pandikit natin. So block laying mortar, that is to be, let's say, B, V, B, L, M. Okay, so this is to be 248 pieces times 0. So 005 yung factor natin dito, no? 0005, I should say, cubic meters per piece. So the unit piece would cancel out, giving you an answer of 248 times 0.10005. So it would give you an answer of 0.124 cubic meters. So after that, you have solved for the volume of mortar here. What you would be doing is to get the total of both fill and block laying mortars. So kunin mo lang yung sum netong dalawa, and the sum of them would be 0.744 plus 0.124. So the volume of mortar, so V mortar, is equal to 0.868 cubic meters. So what we would be doing now is to get the number of bags of cement and the volume of sand. So in mortar, this would be our factor. So lagay ko lang dito, no? The volume of mortar is equal to 0.868. So erase ko lang to para magka-space tayo. So since we already have that, for our volume, I mean for the number of bags, so let's say that this would be n bags, number of bags is equal to the volume, which is 0.868 cubic meters, multiply it by the factor, and our factor is 12 bags per cubic meter. So that is to be 12 bags. So bakit pala 12 bags? Kasi walang sinabi ko anong class dito, and as per default, that is to be 12 bags per cubic meter. So 12 bags per cubic meter. So if you would be multiplying them, you would be arriving at an answer of 0.868 times 12. So that would be 10.416 bags. Though wala namang nabibiling 0.416 na bags, I wouldn't be rounding it up yet because we are not yet done with the computation for number of bags. So we still have plastering works that we would be needing that would be needing cement bags. So tsaka na tayo mag-round up if matapos na tayo sa pagkuha ng number of bags. So that would be for the number of bags in mortar. And as for the the volume of sand, so vol sand, that is to be 0.868 cubic meters times what would be our factor? That would be 1. So, pare-pares lahat yan. Puro 1 yan. So, this is to be times 1 cubic meter. 1 cubic meter per cubic meter mortar. So, cubic meters would cancel out. So, answer natin dito would be 0.868 cubic meters ng sand. So, those would be our answers for mortar. So, on to the next. So, magpapalitada na tayo, no? So, it is said in the problem that the wall is plastered both sides. So, meaning, if we are to get the area of the wall, we would be multiplying it by 2. Kasi back-to-back siya. So, for the area of the wall, both sides, that would be, ano na yung dimensions natin? That would be 6 times 3.3. Times 2, that would be the area of the wall, both sides. Kasi itong 6 meters by 3.3, one side lang yan. Times 2 mo, of course, both sides na. So what we would be needing to compute here would be the volume of plaster. So ano yung volume nito? And once again, the thickness of the plaster is 19 millimeters. So what we would be doing is to multiply this by 19 millimeters. So lagyan na lang natin dito, volume plaster is equal to 6 meters by 3.3 meters by 2. So, ito yung area natin times the thickness, and 19 mm is equal to 0.019 meters. So, our answer here would now be 6 times 3.3 times 2. So, this would be the area of the wall that you would be plastering. Then multiply it by 0.019 meters. So the volume of our plaster would be 0.7524 cubic meters. So that would be the volume of this plaster to be done by Manong Kuya right there. So the next step is to get the number of bags of cement. So n bags, the number of bags is equal to volume 0.7524 cubic meters, and our factor here would still be 12. So class B pa rin tayo kasi hindi na specify. So 12 bags per cubic meter. So our answer here would be, so let's multiply this by 12. So our answer would be 9.0288 bags. So we already have the number of bags. So as for the volume of sand, so let's say vol sand, that is to be 0.7524 cubic meters. So our factor is times 1. But guys, take note, in plastering, we must increase the volume of sand by 33%. So times 1.33. Bakit sa plastering mag-increase tayo ng 1.33 pero bakit sa mortar kanina hindi? Because if you can see in construction sites, the two manongs right here are actually sieving the sand right here, in a way that all of this sand right here would be fine sand only. And if you are to order sand, there are actually some impurities there. So, meron kang mga gravel, meron kang mga malalaking buhangin, may mga bato-bato. Ito kasing volume na to is yung orderin mo, and yung ma-order mo, i-account mo yung 33% na ito, na yun yung mga impurities na pinaglalagay nila dito. So, 1.33. So, our answer here, 0.7524 times 1.33. So that is to be 1.007. So 1.0007 cubic meters of sand. And in fine plastering, what we would be needing is just the number of bag cement. Kasi dito sa fine plaster, pure cement and water yung ipapahid natin sa wall. So we wouldn't be needing sands here. And our factor in fine plastering would be this. So 2.5 kilograms of cement would be needing to cover 1 square meter of wall. So once again, 2.5 kilos yung kailangan na sand para makakover ka ng 1 square meter ng wall. So with that being said, to get the number of bags of cement, that would be the area, which is yung plastered area natin, which is this, itong area na to. Kung ano yung area na na-plaster natin, so that would be 6 meters times 3.3 times 2. Oh, may meters pala dun sa 3.3, no? 6 by 3.3 by 2. So this would be the area. Now multiply this by 2.5 kilograms per square meter. And now, convert natin bilangin natin kung ilang bags yon. And in one bag, so one bag actually has 40 kilograms of cement in it. So, sa isang bag ng semento, 40 kilos yon. So, if we are to multiply all of this, the number of bags that we would be needing in fine plastering would be 6 times 3.3 times 2 times 2.5 divided by 40. So that would be 2.475 bags. So 2.475 bags of cement. Okay. So ngayon, i-add na natin lahat, no? So for the number of bags, so let's have a summary right here first for the mortar works. I mean for the mortar works that would be needing cement and sand. So lagay natin dito muna, no? Guys, pakiayos na lang sa mga solutions niyo, no? But for this, so for the number of bags, that would be ito. So that would be 10.416 plus saan ba? 9 plus 9.0288 plus 2.475. So 2.475. So that would be 21.9. 21.9198. So we would be rounding it up to 22 bags of cement. But guys, in your quiz, in your graded activities, this is what I would be checking. Pero ilagay nyo pa rin ito. But for example that you would be rounding up your answers to 22, pero ang sagot nyo talaga dito is 21.1, pero ang tamang sagot is 21.9, mali yun. So, meron tayong margin of error na ilalagay, i-specify ko per problem. So, that would be 22 bags. So, for volume sand, so that would be 1.00, I mean, magsimula tayo dito. So, that would be 0.868 plus 1.0007. So that is to be 1.8687. So 1.8687 cubic meters. So ito yung i-check ko. Depende kung ilang decimal places yung ihingin ko sa inyong quiz or sa inyong graded activities. But what you would be ordering in real life would be 2 cubic meters. So, ilagay nyo pa rin ito sa inyong mga graded activities. So, what else? So, we already have the volume of sand and the number of bags. Hindi natin na ilagay yung CHB. So, 4 inches CHB. So, that would be, so, NCHB, that would be 248 pieces 4 inches CHB. So, for volume of water, just multiply the number of bags by 6. So, that would be 21.9198. By the way, this should be not rounded. So, yung gagamitin mo dito sa volume of water. So, multiply it by, ano sabi ko, 6 gallons per bag. So, may unit na bag to kanina, no? So, the bag would cancel out. So, your answer here would be 21.9198 times 6. So, that would be 131.5188. So, round it up later. So, 131.5188. So, this would be 132 gallons of water. So, this would be your answer right here. But are we done? Actually, hindi pa. In masonry units, in masonry, we would be needing steel. So, it would be looking like this. Lagay ko lang, no? Teka. So, meron tayong bakal dyan, meron tayong bakal dyan, meron tayong bakal dyan, and depending on the design, meron pa actually tayong horizontal na steel bars. So, most of the time, you would be putting horizontal bars right here in the dimensions, in the intervals of two hollow blocks. So, tagdadalawa. So, ayan yan. And in my projects, I actually use the spacing of 0.4 vertical spacing and 0.6 horizontal spacing. So, what does that mean? Yung ginagamit ko is ito, 0.4 meters, and ito, yung spacing na dalawang bakal na yan, is 0.6 meters. So, it would depend upon the specification that is specified. Well, specification that is specified by the engineer or by the designer. But in my case, ito pala yung ginagamit ko. Let's just use that instead. So, 0.6 and 0.4. So, paano ba natin magagamit yung steelwork? So, for example, na meron na tayong bakal dito. Then, meron na naman tayo. Oops, sorry. That meron na tayong bakal dito. Meron tayong bakal dito. Meron tayong bakal dito. Tapos meron na naman tayong bakal dito. Tapos meron na naman tayong bakal dito. So, that is to be the layout that I am using in my projects. So, once again, how can we estimate that? Gawa tayo ng certain na box right here. Square, I should say. So, let's say that this is a 1 square meter box. Square. Once again, square. And ngayon, using this layout, so let's say my spacing would be 0.6 horizontal spacing and 0.4 vertical spacing. So this is just an example. So ngayon, sa 1 square meter natin na to, maglalagay tayo ng bakal with these intervals. Okay, so 0.6 horizontal spacing. So, of course, maglalagay tayo sa una. So, this would be your first bar. And as for the second, maglalagay tayo with the spacing of 0.6. So, approximately, it would be here. So, this would be 0.6 and 0.4. So, hindi na tayo makapaglagay, no? Kasi 1 meter by 1 meter lang to. So, meters and meters. And as for the vertical spacing, so, of course, maglalagay tayo dito sa una. Then, mag-offset tayo ng 0.4. So, it would approximately be here. And dagdag na naman tayo ng 0.4. It would approximately be here. So, kung di tayo nagkakamali, this would be 0.4 meters. This is to be 0.4 pa rin to, no? 0.4 meters. So, this is to be 0.2 meters. So, 0.4, 0.8, tapos, ayan. Ngayon, bilangin mo kung ilan yung blue lines na ginawa mo. So, that would be, ibahin ko lang yung color para kita natin. So, this would be 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. So, meaning, in our case right here, in 1 square meter of area, we actually have, let's say, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 5 meters of rebar. So, meron tayong 5 meters ng bakal dyan sa 1 square meter natin ng wall ng area. So, once again, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I-add mo lang lahat ng length ng pinagagawa natin. So, that would be 5. So, what we would be doing here is to multiply this by our area. So, kung ang area natin ng wall, so, area natin ng wall kanina is equal to 6 times 3.3. And nakalimutan ko na kung ano to. So, solve na lang ulit natin. 6 times 3.3. So, that is to be 19.8. 19.8 square meters. So, for us to get the total length of rebar that we would be needing in our project, so, length of rebar, so, RSB. So, RSB is reinforcing steel bars, okay? So, the length of RSB is equal to 19.8 square meters. Then, multiply this by the factor that we have derived earlier. So, this is to be 5 meters of RSB for every 1 square meter of wall area. So, meter squared would cancel out. So, this would be, so multiply natin to by 5. So, we would be having an answer of 99 meters. So, length for RSB. But, by the way, guys, this wouldn't be your answer kasi dapat mag-increase tayo ng 10% sa length. Why would that be the case? So, that 10% that we would be increasing would account the splicing of bars. Because, I mean, in real life, so, punta lang ako dito. If you are to splice the rebars, it wouldn't be like this. So, kung ito man yung rebar number 1, ito yung rebar number 2, hindi mo pagdudugtungin ng ganyan yan. It would be something, somewhere like, something like this. So, ganyan yan. And this length right here would be accounted by the 10% increase that we would be using as the increase of our lengths. So, once again, ito yung 10% na increase natin. So, okay. So, with that being said, erase na muna ulit natin to. What we would be using, and what we would be doing is to multiply it by 1.1. So, 10% increase. This would be the factor of safety for splicing. So, this would be the increase for splicing. Okay, so moving forward, so what would our answer here be? So, itong 99 natin, increase natin ng 10%. So, our length would be 108.9 meters. Okay, so paano ba yung bilihan natin ng bakal? Per meter ba? Actually, hindi. So, that would be per piece. So, for us to know the number of reinforcing steel bars that we would be needing for our project, so NRSB, we would be multiplying this by our factor, so 108.9 meters. And actually, guys, in one piece of reinforcing steel bars, 6 meters yung isa. So, meron yung iba 9 meters, but the most commercially available rebar would be 6 meters. So, by that itself, solve nyo lang yan. So, 108.9 divided by 6. So, this is to be 18.15. And wala nga nabibili na 0.15 na bakal. So, we would be increasing it to 19. So, wait lang. 18.15. Then, increase this to 19. So, ito yung bibilhin talaga natin. So, once again, in your quizzes, ilagay nyo itong dalawang to para na makita kung tama man yung computation nyo at hindi kayo chumamba. So, 19 pieces of RSB. So, lagay ko lang ulit dito. 19 pieces RSB. Okay, so ayan na yan. So, guys, are we done? Actually, not yet. Because if we would be going back to this slide right here, ang sinolve lang natin would be numbers 1 to number 6. So, meron pa tayong tie wires. So, paano ba yung tie wires na yan? If you would be having this certain area right here, I mean this certain setup right there, if there would be an intersection, you would be applying tie wires to it. So, ito maglagay tayo ng red marks. So, in these joints right here, you would be tying them, yung mga alambre, GI wire, you would be tying them there. And in one tie, so wait lang, labas ko yung red mark natin. So, note, one tie is approximately 0.2 to 0.4 meters. Ganun kahaba yung alambre na kailangan natin kada isang tie. And in our estimation purposes, since it would range from 0.2 to 0.4, let us use 0.3 meters per tie. So what we would be doing here is to count the number of joints. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So meron tayong 6 joints. So meaning, we would be multiplying 6 by 0.3 to get the number, or I mean to get the length of the tie. So, okay. That is to be 6 ties per square meter. So, okay, for us to get the total number of ties, we would be multiplying that factor right there to our area. So, once again, our area, kalimutan ko na naman. Sige, lagyan na lang natin. So, for us to get the length of the tie, that is to be the area. So, ano ba yung area natin kanina? So, 6 meters by 3.3 meters. So, this is actually our area. So, this is to be our area. Then, multiply it by our factor. So, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So, we have 6 ties per square meter. So, square meters would cancel out. And after that, multiply this by the length of one tie. So, that is to be 0.3 meters per tie. So, maka-cancel out lahat yan. Matitira lang is yung length ng meter. So, by that, the length of the tie would be 6 times 3.3 times 6 times 0.3. So, our answer here would be 35.64 meters. So, that is to be for our length of the tie. And, guys, ang bentahan ba natin ng ties would be in terms of meters? Guys, hindi. Bentahan natin ng ties is in per kilo. Per kilo talaga yung bentahan natin ng alambre. So, okay, for us to get the weight of the tie, so weight of the tie is equal to 35.64 meters. Then, let's convert this into kilos. Guys, take note. Wait lang, maglagay lang ako ng note dito. Note. 1 kilogram of ties, 1 kilogram of ties, I should say, 1 kilogram of ties is equal to 53 meters of yung GI wire. Our conversion factor would be 1 kilogram per 53 meters. So, okay, let's convert that into kilograms. So, 35.64 divided by 53, that is to be 0.67. So, 0.67 kilos. So, ito yung answer nyo for this matter. Ayan, and depende pala sa hardware. Yung ibang hardware, ayaw magbenta ng below 1 kilo. So, with that, mag-round up na lang kayo ng 1 kilogram ng tie for that whole project. Okay, so next up. Ngayon, ilalagay nyo na yung inyong bill of materials and cost estimates. So, Ito lang muna fill upan ko, itong material unit and quantity. And as for the unit cost, alam nyo naman na yan. And hindi ako nakapag-research yung updated na unit cost natin, no? So, ito lang muna yung gagawin ko. So, for the material, ang kailangan natin would be CHB. So, kulang pala yung table natin, ano? So, okay. CHB. Then, sand. Ay, cement. Sand. Okay, sand. Reinforcing steel bars. Tapos yung ating tie wires. And lastly, yung ating water. So for here, di ko na isulat pa pala. So as for the unit per piece, so piece, cement bags. Then as for sand, that would be cubic meters. Our SB would be in pieces. Tie wires would be in kilos, and water would be in gallons. So lagay nyo na lang yung quantities dito. And as for the unit cost, ito nare-research to, and after you have known the unit cost already, multiply nyo yung quantity and unit cost, you would be arriving at the answer here. So, okay, that would be it for this pre-recorded lecture. I would be uploading another pre-recorded lecture on how to solve for the labor cost. And paano yung ilalagay nyo na mismo sa detailed estimate yung inyong mga answers. So that would be it for this pre-recorded lecture. If there are any concerns, feel free to message me. So bye-bye.